Hello. I hope you find this story interesting. Your feedback, suggestions, and subscriptions are always welcome. Friendship is about trust. But what if one day you realize that you trusted the wrong person? What if the person who has been by your side for more than 50 years turned out to be your biggest enemy? Harold Williams had everything: stability, savings, confidence in the future. But then he made one mistake. He trusted his friend. Harold and Michael had been friends since childhood. They went to school together, served in the army together, and started their adult lives together. Even their families were close. And if there's one person I can trust, it's Michael. Harold always told his children. He could not even imagine that it was Michael who would ruin his life. One night they were sitting in their favorite bar. Michael leaned closer. Harold, I know a way to make a lot of money. Harold smiled. You've always had a penchant for adventure. But this time it's official and risk-free. Harold raised his eyebrows. So tell me. Michael took out his tablet and opened an investment website. Charts, reviews, financial reports. It all looked too good. Harold had always been careful with his money. He didn't chase easy money. But when your best friend swears it's safe, is there any reason to doubt it? I've already invested $50,000, Michael said, and in 3 months I've doubled it. Harold thought about it. He had been saving his whole life to have peace of mind in retirement. But what if this chance could make his old age even better? Little did he know that this evening would change everything. This conversation would be the beginning of his biggest mistake. Great opportunities come rarely. But what if this opportunity was too good to be true? Harold had worked all his life, saving for a quiet retirement. He hasn't chased risks. But this time his best friend assured him that it was a win-win. Think about it. Harold. Michael pulled the tablet closer. People are already making thousands on this. Harold looked at the screen. The graphs showed steady growth. The financial reports looked convincing. Is it legal? Michael laughed. You know me. I wouldn't go into something dubious. Harold nodded. Yes, he had known Michael all his life. He had always trusted him. Harold came home and thought long and hard. He didn't need the extra money. He had a comfortable airbag. But the idea of getting even more without making any effort was haunting him. The next day, he met with Michael again. I'm not sure yet. Michael smiled. What if I show you how easy it is to withdraw money? He pulled out his phone and went to the app. A watch. Harold saw with his own eyes how $10,000 were credited to Michael's account. It really works, Michael said. And in that moment, all Harold's doubts disappeared. He transferred $50,000. It was only a fraction of his retirement savings. He decided to test the scheme first, and then, if all went well, to invest more. Michael shook his hand. You won't regret it, my friend. Harold felt excited and confident. He did not know that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. A scam never starts abruptly. First, they make you feel the profits, to make you believe, to make you relax. And then, when you have no more doubts, you are left with nothing. Harold didn't realize he was standing on the edge of a cliff. A month after investing, Harold received his first payout. He received $7,000 to his account. He couldn't believe his eyes. I told you worked? Michael smiled. Harold was relieved. He trusted the system even more. Michael started talking about investments again. What if you invested more? You'll make even more money. Harold hesitated. His instinct said, don't rush into it. But Michael smiled. My friend, we're in this together. And these words convinced him. The next day, he transferred another $100,000. A month passed. But this time the payment did not come. Harold tried to call Michael. Don't worry, he replied. It's just a temporary delay. Harold felt inexplicably worried, but he trusted his friend. The money was not coming. He called Michael again. The market is unstable, but everything is under control. Harold nodded, although he was uneasy inside. Something was not right. What do you do when you start to realize that you've been deceived? But you don't have proof yet. When you realize that you have been deceived, the first reaction is despair. The second is anger. But the worst thing is the realization that there is no going back. Harold Williams lost everything without even noticing when it happened. Harold opened the bank's mobile app. He looked the numbers for a long time, as if they might change. His balancing $37. His hand shook. He tried to withdraw at least something from his investment account. It was an error. Request rejected. The money no longer existed. Harold called Michael. Hello, he answered as if nothing had happened. Michael, what's going on? Where's my money? Pause. The situation is complicated, but don't worry. I lost all my savings. It's only temporary. Michael spoke too calmly. I want my money back now. The call went dead. Harold called back. The caller was not available. He sat down in his chair. His heart was pounding. All his life he had worked, made plans for a quiet retirement. And now there was nothing. Only debts, fear, and disappointment. But Michael couldn't just disappear. So Harold decided to find him. When you are betrayed by those you have trusted all your life, it is not just pain. It's a blow that's hard to recover from. Harold lost more than just his money. He lost his trust in people. But he wasn't ready to give up just yet. The next morning he went to the police station. The officer listened carefully to his story, looked over the documents, and sighed. We have received several complaints about this company, but it will be difficult to prove fraud. Is there anything you can do? We can open a case, but getting your money back, it's almost impossible. Harold left the police station devastated. He had hoped for justice, but the reality was brutal. He tried to call Michael again. This time he answered. Harold, I know you're angry. Money, it's not that simple. You stole everything I had. I lost my money too. Harold clenched his fists. No, you just set me up. Michael was silent. And this time, that silence was the answer. Harold was not ready to give up. If the police wouldn't help, he would find Michael himself. He started his own investigation, and what he found made him shudder. Michael had done this before. Harold wasn't his first victim, but he was going to be his last. Trust is something that takes years to build, but it only takes one blow to destroy it. Harold was ready to accept the loss of his money, but he would never accept betrayal. And if Michael thinks he can just disappear, he's wrong. Harold opened his laptop and started looking for any information. He found old articles about similar fraud schemes. All the stories involved the same investment schemes, the same promises, and one familiar method. When it came to money, the organizers disappeared. The devil is in the details, Harold muttered. Michael couldn't just disappear into thin air. Harold found a forum where people discussed similar scams. He wrote a message. I was deceived by a company that promised me a quick investment. Is there anyone else who was injured? An hour later, he received a reply. I lost $40,000 because of this bastard. The stranger wrote. Who was it? Michael Brown. Harold felt his heart pounding. Do you know where he is now? There are rumors that he is in Vegas. Harold did not hesitate. The next morning he packed his things, got in his car, and drove to Las Vegas. He didn't need money. He needed answers. And if Michael thinks he can get away with it, he's wrong. What will he do when he finds him? Is he ready to cross the line? People change, or maybe they've always been like that. We just don't want to see the truth until it hits us in the heart. Harold thought he had known Michael all his adult life, but now he finds out something he would have been better off never knowing. When Harold arrived in Las Vegas, he met the man who'd written to him on the forum. His name was Tom Gilmore. They were sitting in a small cafe. "Huh? Were you a friend of his?" Tom asked, looking at Harold carefully. For over 50 years. Tom smiled wryly. Then you probably don't know who he really is." Tom took a folder out of his bag and put it on the table. Harold opened it and saw old newspapers, copies of documents, police reports, and each article had a familiar name: Michael Brown. It turned out that 20 years ago he had already been involved in financial fraud. "This is a mistake," Harold muttered. "Do you really think this is a coincidence?" Harold felt himself become enraged. He had known Michael all his adult life, but it seemed that this was not the Michael he had considered a friend. Now all the details began to come together. All the times Michael had borrowed money and never paid it back. His mysterious investments that he never talked about openly. His habit of disappearing when things got bad. It wasn't a mistake or an accident. Michael had been doing this his whole life. Harold had no more doubts. He would find Michael, and this time they would have a different conversation. There are moments when you stand on the edge, at a one step, and you become someone you never wanted to be. Harold thought he was looking for justice, but now the question was different. Is it justice or just a thirst for revenge? Harold found Michael in a Las Vegas casino. When he was sitting at a table surrounded by women, throwing chips and laughing. No fear, no regrets. Harold clenched his fists. He slowly walked over and sat down next to him. "How long have you been looking for me?" Michael didn't even flinch. "Long enough to realize who you really are. Give me one reason not to call the police right now," Harold said coldly. Michael smiled. "The police? What would they do?" Harold remained silent. No, you do realize that the money is gone, right? It's gone like the wind." Harold gritted his teeth. But I can make you a deal," Michael continued. "How much do you want, Harold?" "All my money." "That's not possible." But I can get some of it back." Harold felt himself shaking. Michael was testing him again. He's manipulating him again, I think. "My friend, you don't want to spend the rest of your life in poverty, do you?" Harold stood up slowly. He could have accepted the offer, but then he would have become like Michael. "I don't want your blood money," he said. He took out his phone and pressed a button. The conversation was recorded the whole time. Let's see what the police say now. Will the law punish Michael? Or will he escape responsibility again? And there are moments in life when it seems that everything is finally falling into place, that justice will be done. But those who have deceived others for years always have a backup plan. Michael was not going to give up so easily. Harold handed over the recording to the police. The officer listened to the conversation, nodding his head. "This is strong evidence," he said. Harold felt hope inside him for the first time in a long time. We will start an investigation. But there is one problem." "What's that?" Michael Brown had already disappeared. Harold wasn't surprised. Michael always ran away when things got bad. But this time he wouldn't let him get away. The police started checking bank accounts and security cameras, and they found a trail. He booked a ticket to Mexico, the officer said. Harold knew that if Michael crossed the border, they would never find him again. Harold arrived at the airport. His hands were shaking with tension. He walked into the waiting room and saw a familiar face. Michael was sitting in a chair, an expensive drink in his hand, as if nothing had happened. Harold came closer. You decided to run away. Michael looked up. Buddy, you don't want to do that. I already did. The police are on their way. Michael's eyes narrowed. You could have gotten some of the money, and instead you're going to be left with nothing. You made me poor. But I'm not going to be like you. Michael sighed and leaned back in his chair. You were always too right, Harold. And a few minutes later, officers entered the airport. Michael Brown. You are under arrest. Michael has been caught. But does this mean that Harold will finally get justice? Harold thought that when Michael was arrested, he would be relieved. But the truth is that justice and satisfaction are different things. You can't get your money back. You can't change the past. And most importantly, the person he had trusted all his life was not who he seemed. 2 months after his arrest, Michael was sitting in a courtroom. His lawyer tried to prove that it was not a fraud, but a business that simply did not work out. But the judge reviewed the records of conversations and financial reports and understood Michael Brown was a professional swindler. The sentence, 10 years in prison. Harold sat in the courtroom and listened. He should have been happy, but instead he felt nothing but emptiness. After the trial, a lawyer approached him. We can get some of your money back, Harold sighed. Part was not everything. He knew he had lost much more than money. He had lost 50 years of friendship. One day, Harold returned to the same bar where Michael had convinced him to invest. He ordered a glass of whiskey and looked in the mirror across the bar. How blind I was, but he decided not to live in the past. He had lost a lot. But he did not lose himself. What is worse, money or losing a person you considered a friend? And is it possible to trust someone again after such a blow? Time heals wounds, but some wounds leave scars forever. Harold could have forgotten, could have moved on. But the question haunted him, is it possible to forgive someone who has destroyed everything? One morning Harold received an envelope. The sender, Michael Brown. He looked at it for a long time, not knowing whether to open it. Finally, he tore the edge and opened the letter. My friend, I know that after everything that's happened you must hate me, and you have every right to. But I want you to know that I didn't plan for it to end this way. I just wanted more. And it destroyed me. You have a choice, keep the anger inside you or let it go. I'm not asking for excuses, I just want answers. Can you ever forgive me? Harold felt himself twisting inside. Michael was still manipulating him, even from behind bars. Elena, he didn't ask, how are you? He didn't say, I'm guilty. He just wanted to ease his own conscience. Harold took a piece of paper and wrote, Michael, I hold no grudge. But that does not mean I have forgiven you. I know you stole not only my money, you stole my time, my trust, my life. You made your own choice. And I made mine, and you no longer exist for me. He put the letter in an envelope and sent it off. Harold decided not to live in the past. But is it possible to completely forget a person who has been your friend for 50 years? Thank you for being with me to the end. Subscribe and leave comments. Could you forgive such a betrayal?